Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our weekly Sunday school lesson. I am Elder Latanya Milliken of the All Nations Church in Oakland, California. My pastor is Bishop Terrence L. Milliken, and this is Lesson 12 of our fall quarter. The date of the lesson is November 20th, 2022, and we're in the book of Leviticus. This week, we will be highlighting the 19th chapter, the 9th through the 18th verse, pausing on the 18th, and we're going to hop over to the 33rd verse and go to the 37th verse. Our subject today, obedience among neighbors. And so if you've been paying close attention to all the titles this quarter, they all begin with obedience. Obedience. God requires us, his children, to be obedient to his laws, to his commandments, to his regulations, to his judgments. All of these things, we are required to be obedient. And so he wants us, he teaches us these guidelines and share with us these guidelines so that we will be like him, just like him, loving like him, compassionate like him. Okay, I'm already getting into the lesson. So before we get into the lesson, we're going to read. So have your favorite translations. It's quite a bit of reading. Again, that's Exodus, the 19th chapter, beginning at the 9th verse. I want to give a shout out to me. Happy birthday to me. I had a birthday November the 17th. Want to say thank you to everyone who made my day special. God bless you. And to anyone who is celebrating a birthday in the month of November, happy birthday to you all over the world. And if you're celebrating anything special, any day, God bless you. All the best to you. And so this is airing for November 20th. But the next time we see each other or you see me, we would have had our Thanksgiving celebration. So happy Thanksgiving to each of you. I do hope you have a wonderful, safe, and enjoyable Thanksgiving. This is our time to pause, to stop, to refrain. Remember, we've learned a lot this quarter. We learned a lot about the Sabbath. The Sabbath day and the Lord's day and the holy days and the holy festivities and festivals were when the children of Israel stopped. Well, we are stopping, pausing to reflect on the harvest that God has given us. Whatever that harvest is, whatever your pay is, whatever you bought in, it all comes from God. And so we're pausing to say thank you and to be kind and loving and spend time with our family. So I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving. Well, you know what? All the housekeeping is out of the way. Let's jump into our lesson. We're going to do some reading, and then I'm going to try to go as quickly as I can and cover as much of these regulations as possible. So if you have your favorite translations, let's just go real quickly. I'm in the way, and it's the 19th chapter, and I will begin at the 9th verse. It reads, "When you harvest the crops of your land, do not harvest the grain among the edges of your fields, and do not pick up what the harvesters drop. It is the same with your grape crop. Do not strip every last bunch of grapes from the vines. Do not pick up the grapes that fall to the ground. Leave them for the poor and the foreigner that's living among you. I am the Lord your God. Do not steal," verse 11. "Do not deceive or cheat one another. Do not bring shame on the name of your God by using it to swear falsely. I am the Lord." Verse 13, "Do not defraud or rob your neighbor. Do not make your hired workers wait until the next day to receive their pay." Verse 14, "Do not insult the deaf or cause the blind to stumble. You must fear your God. I am the Lord. Do not twist justice in legal matters by favoring the poor or being partial to the rich and powerful. Always judge people fairly." Verse 16, "Do not spread slanderous gossip among your people. Do not stand idle by while your neighbor's life is threatened. I am the Lord your God. Verse 17, do not nurse hatred in your heart for any of your relatives. Confront people directly so you will not be held guilty for their sin. Verse 18, do not seek revenge or bear grudge against a fellow Israelite, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. That's verse 19. 18, we're going to hop down to verse 33. Pick up there. Do not take advantage of the foreigners who live among you in your land. Treat them like native-born Israelites and love them as you love yourself. Remember that you were once foreigners living in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Verse 35. Do not use dishonest standards when measuring length, weight, or volume. Your scales and weighs must be accurate. Your containers of measuring dry material and liquids must be accurate. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. Verse 37, you must be careful to keep all of the decrees and the regulations by putting them into practice. By putting them into practice. By putting them into practice. I am the Lord your God. So let's go real quickly to all of these things. I just kind of want to break down them real quickly and then share with you what the aim of the lesson and the application of the lesson is. So the lesson starts out real quickly about welfare. And so the landowners who owned grain or a vineyard or olive trees, they were obligated to allow small amounts of the remaining crop to remain for the poor. So the harvesters, the people they paid to harvest or to pick, were not to reap the very edges of the field. So if it's a square, so on the edges, they could not reap that area. And whatever they dropped, they had to leave it there. And this was deliberate for the poor. So the crops were dropped and left. And the law said they could not pick it up once they dropped it. And so it was actually prohibited to go back so once you, give you an example. So once you, like if it was an olive tree, once you shake the tree, and whatever fell, you could gather that, but you couldn't shake the tree twice. And so this shaking or this beating, in addition, it was permissible, however, for a neighbor to go into the field or the vineyard before harvest, and pick enough to satisfy their hunger. But it was not legal to carry it away like in a bucket or a bag, like you was picking it to take it home. And you could not like cut off the grain with a sickle or a blade or a branch. You couldn't do that. But it was a combination. If you think about it, it was a combination of the owner's generosity and the poor's labor. And so there was this balance. So those who had to share with those who did not, and they brought a balance. All right. And so this kind of ties into the story of Naomi and Ruth, if you know the story. And for those of you who don't, there were a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law who came back home, and when they came back home, they had no husbands. And if you know the custom, women could, if you didn't have a son or a husband to take care of you, then you were in a bad situation. That's why the Lord wanted the widows and the orphans to be taken care of. Long story short, Ruth decided to glean in Boaz's field. And so Boaz he saw her gleaming, and he told the harvesters, drop some on purpose for her. He had compassion for her. So he said, just on purpose, drop some for her. And so she was able to glean and to feed her mother-in-law and herself because of his generosity. And it was legal to do that, to leave some and to drop some, and so the poor could come, or those who couldn't take care of themselves or who did not work. So the next verses share with us about frauding It forbids frauding against thy neighbor by word or deed. Thou shalt not steal, it says, which is the 8th commandment. And it adds, neither deal falsely or intend to take advantage of a person physically, materially, or even for psychological benefits. Okay? You cannot take what is not entitled to you. It goes on to add with that, lie not one to another, which is the 9th commandment, which means to bear false witness. So don't lie. If you didn't see it, you can't witness to it. So don't share it. Don't bear false witness. Lying and stealing are both deceitful and is a means of defrauding people, defrauding your neighbor, either of his property or his reputation. So do not lie. Do not steal. Do not bear false witness. The Lord says, and I'm sorry, scratch your throat. So the next prohibition was to not swear by God's name falsely. Neither shall thou profane the Lord's name. This was the 3rd commandment. And so, people are not above using God's name for an evil cause, to cheat a neighbor. And I'll give you a quick example. The story of Jacob. Jacob and Esau, they were twins. Jacob was the younger, Esau was the older. And when their father Israel was about to die, Israel, and typically the older one gets the blessing, gets the inheritance. Israel instructed Esau, go out and kill some venison and cook it up the way I like it and bring it back. And so his younger brother overheard that. And so him and his mother conspired to get the blessing. He got the meat, I believe, from her. No, I believe he got the meat. They conspired. They got the meat. They cooked it the way Israel liked it. And then they did some other manipulative things. And so he went in with the meat because his dad was partially blind. So he couldn't see what he looked like. So he asked him the question. This was the younger brother deceiving the older brother. The father was expecting the older brother, but the younger brother brought the meat in. And so he says, how did you get this meat so fast? And so he said, because the Lord thy God brought it to me. And this story is in Genesis, the 27th chapter and the 20th verse. So he lied about the source of the meat. And he profaned God's name in doing so. And so we're not to defame God, because he said in his word, you defame my name, you use my name unlawfully. I will not overlook your guilt. More and more regulations. So let's move on. It goes on to share in our reading, the law applied to hired workers. Okay, it was a common practice. To pay day laborers whatever they had agreed upon to be paid by the end of the day. And this was the law. And so the law is saying, do not hold the wages until the next morning. For to hold the wage was sin. And God would take note of that. And you're seeing, hopefully you're seeing this pattern. Hopefully you're seeing this, a God that's looking out for us. A God that's teaching us how to treat one another, how to keep peace, how to keep harmony, how to be like him, how to be compassionate. When a person works, he deserves his pay. Pay him. All right? Israel's law also, we're going to move on, condemn those who dishonest the infirm. It says, thou shalt not curse to death, because they can't hear your curse. This is callous. Do not put a stumbling block before the Lord. This is heartless, a heartless act. To dishonest the disabled is to take lightly the God who created him. Now, if here's what I see. I see welfare. I see, CRA, Community Reinvestment Act, helping the community. I see, what is that? The act that we do to help They don't really like the word handicap anymore. But anyway, there are things we do now as citizens and as lawmakers to help the poor, to help the disabled. These are righteous things. These are things we should line up and agree to. All right, because God wants us to show compassion, because there will always be poor people. There will always be those who are less fortunate. Show compassion. Do no unrighteousness in judgment. This is geared toward the judges and the officials. Be fair to the poor and the wealthy, and do not show partiality to the poor or the wealthy. And do not take into consideration a person's economic status. We must just be fair. Justice should be fair. Wouldn't that be a righteous thing? It goes on to share, not to be spreading lies, calling distrust. Don't be a talebearer. Don't be, because when you sharing false news, then you create distrust in a community. You create distrust in a family when you share, or among friends when you share and you gossip. Don't stand against the poor. Don't stand against the blood of thy neighbor. In other words, don't lie against thy neighbor, because lying against thy neighbor may put him to death. So we talked about the story of Naboth in the last lesson or two, where King Ahab and his wife Jezebel, Ahab won Naboth's vineyard, and so they conspired. They had two people lie against him, and he lost his life. So don't do that. Love your neighbor. It's the bottom line. Love your neighbor. Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thy heart, for until hatred is vanished, injustice will flourish. So don't hate your brother in your heart. Love your neighbor. But it says love your neighbor, but don't overlook his sins. If he sins, then rebuke him, because you may be saving him from judgment. But don't be vengeful, and don't bear a grudge against people. Vengeance is an outward manifestation of a grudge in the heart. So it's just let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Don't hold malice in your heart. Forgive. When you stand, forgive. Forgive us of our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. We want people to forgive us, then we must forgive them. Do not be vengeful and bear a grudge. And then lastly, in wrapping up, talking about compassion in your business dealings, the lesson was sharing with us, be fair to foreigners and strangers, and show compassion and love as you love yourself. Treat them like your own countrymen. Make sure you do right in business and in transactions. Make sure you have integrity. You have the right measurements, the right weights. For the law forbids deceitful practice using different weights. In the conclusion of our lesson, before I read the fact of the lesson and the application, the Lord in this lesson was directing Israel back. He was giving them a reason why, because he was the Lord and he had a special relationship with them. Therefore, their behavior was to exalt his name. So all of these things we learn, they were to get that right because they were representing him. And their behavior, our behavior as believers, as Christians, as the children of God must reflect our God. And it does. And so the Lord was letting them know their behavior was to exalt his name, and our behavior is to exalt his name as well. Let me real quickly, as we wrap up, give you the aim of the lesson. The fact of the lesson is to show that God gave laws for the welfare of the disadvantaged and to ensure honest business practices and proper interpersonal contact. It's Thanksgiving. Time to give back and to get along. The principle is to help the students understand that God's will is for the people to show honesty and concern for one another. The application is to make us more caring toward others and to ensure honesty in our practice. Next week is our last lesson in our quarter. We will examine the plan for providing a regular, fresh start for Israel every 50 years, and that will be in Leviticus, the 25th chapter. Don't forget, happy Thanksgiving. Don't forget to share the word. It's a great time of the year to do that. Like, subscribe, and leave your comments. Until next week, happy Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.